And joining us via Zoom to discuss the dangers of fresh military into African politics is Global Affairs Analyst Paul Ejime. Good to have you join us, Paul Ejime.
Thank you very much for having me.
This is now being termed a coup within a coup because this Colonel Assimi Goïta was responsible for the removal of the former president in Abubakar Keïta in August last year, and now we're seeing that he has also now removed systematically the current president and prime minister. What's your take on the recent development?
Well, it speaks to the perhaps ineffectiveness of whatever negotiation or intervention that has taken place, because what has happened is that the military, they want to have their way. When the coup happened in August last year, there were, you had hue and cry and then sanctions and all that. But it appears that they have not learned anything, any lesson. And that is because if you allow them, remember they had asked for 3 years and then reduced it to 2 before they now. So they are running their own program, transition program. That's what it is. ECOWAS only acquiesced to it, and all the international community, they all acquiesced to it. But who has the greatest responsibility here? I think it's France, because of its intervention and involvement in the former colonies. It has really to come out and then and clean, the clean hands, like it's now trying to do in Rwanda. After 30 years, it's coming now to say that they bear the greatest responsibility. In all these former colonies, French intervention is constituting destabilization, a hindrance rather than, facilitation to democracy. So if care is not taken, now you call it a coup within a coup. That is right, and that is happening within 10 months. In Chad, there was an assassination by the military. In Niger, there was an attempted coup just before the president-elect was sworn in. So I hope Africa and West Africa in particular is not retrogressing into the old days, because they are supposed to be consolidating on democracy and not going back. So I think leaders...
I want to pick up on that point you just raised about consolidating on democracy and not going back. And then the earlier point you also raised about the effectiveness of the earlier mediation between ECOWAS and the military junta. We've seen you mentioned Chad, you mentioned Niger, there is Sierra Leone, there is Burkina Faso, there is Liberia. What does this say about the decisiveness of ECOWAS in enforcing its protocols and sanctioning members who flout them?
Well, you mentioned Sierra Leone and Liberia. These were places where ECOWAS can really say that they had the recorded successes. And what has happened is now there is a slide. They are not doing that kind of success is being, eroded by the kind of leadership that you have now. In both in ECOWAS and then in the regional, they call them the regional economic communities, REX, and then the AU. And also, but you also have to start from the nations themselves. How formidable, how credible are the leaders, at the national level, because that is when you now have to, extrapolate that into the regional or continental level. It shows that there is deficiency in the case of how the quality of elections that are being held, where oppositions are either pushed out, or opposition leaders are put in jail, or people not allowing the level playing field for democracy to take root and then thrive. I think that is the issue. Because that is what gives rise to all this kind of discontentment and then allowing now the military to come back. One is not making any excuse for the military, because the days of military rule should be over. It's over and should be over. But it's not just by saying it. Politicians have to act and speak in a way, walk the talk, to tell the military that their position is in the barracks. but and not give them the chance to now begin to take over because of failure of leadership. And it is failure of leadership that is that West Africa is suffering from, both at the national level,
and as we can
the regional
see,
level, and
Mr. Ejime, as we can see, Mali and Chad already set a dangerous precedence for Africa. But let's focus on Mali before we get to the issue of the military intervention in Africa. We have seen now that Colonel Assimi Goïta has clearly shown that he and the military junta are in command and are in control in Mali. What leverage does ECOWAS have now in the mediation process?
Well, going by what has happened over the past couple of years, not much, because they have not shown by their body language that they can be tough. This is one of the same ECOWAS that has suspended some countries in the past. Niger, for instance, when the former president wanted to tamper with the constitution, ECOWAS, took a stance. And then in Gambia, in 2011, when Ejime held an election, ECOWAS did not send observers, and it came out to say, well, that there was the conditions there were not, good enough for an election to hold. But now what you find is just sending observers and then rubber stamping of, giving support to incumbency. And that is what is emboldening everybody, both the politicians and then the military. And if you don't deliver, if you say, well, you don't want change by force, then you have to go play by the rules. Don't give the military the chance or the excuse to take over, and then you begin to cry that it is an aberration and so. There are conditions there. There are protocols about zero tolerance for the violence takeover of a government. But how do you prevent it? You have to prevent it by giving good governance. It is by good leadership, taking care of the people. You can't be ruling a place where people are hungry, there is poverty, and there is insecurity. Or you have you only surround yourself with your people from your area, or from your religious group, or from your ethnic group. These are the issues that are fueling and triggering and facilitating this discontentment in Africa. It is about leadership. Let the leaders and look at themselves again. And even when any leader, they have what they call peer review. If a leader is not behaving well, you don't need others to come outside, and Africans can come to themselves. AU has that to say, listen, my brother, this is not right. This is not, because when it does happen, my people say that when it touches the nose, the eye will start bringing tears. So whatever affects one will affect all.
But Mr. Ejime, military intervention has never proven to be the answer. But we're seeing that now, one too many. Chad, in Mali, even outside Nigeria, we're seeing it happen in Myanmar. And the uprising in the Middle East started with just one country, and then we see how it spread to other countries. Syria is still recovering from that uprising. How do we ensure that this doesn't become the norm in Africa, where this dangerous precedence has now been set?
Let me repeat myself. It is by good governance, making sure that the people's interests and people's well-being and welfare are protected. If you don't, and then to be seen to be transparent and credible, with integrity, rule with sacrifice. Leadership is not about, it's about service. It's not by service to self, but service to your people. You are holding power in trust for the people. You have to give stewardship, to say, this is what I did when I was there. Look at what is it called, Kagame of Rwanda. He has his fault, but remember where Rwanda is coming from. From 1994 genocide. Rwanda is now one of the fastest growing economies. It's about leadership. Let the leaders find it you don't come to power to begin to fester your own nest, or begin to talk about your family, or your ethnic group, or your religious group. No, it is about service to the greater majority. And once that doesn't happen, well, you are vulnerable to anything, including military takeover. So I think Africans, we went through this route before. It didn't pay. Military understands that they cannot, they can't sustain their power in anywhere in the world. But they are doing it because they seem to have left they've left the people, those who are the civilians and politicians have given them that excuse. It shouldn't be so. Right. They should make them to understand that military must subject itself to democratic rule and democratic principles.
Absolutely. And we are going to continue to monitor the situation in Mali as well as development across the African continent. It's always great to have you talk to us, Global Affairs Analyst Paul Ejime.
Thank you very much for having me.